Hi everyone. Thank you for coming and really pleased to meet you. If you could just pop yourself on mute, please, that would be grand. And I'd like to welcome you to this evening. So I'm going to just do a quick introduction about Jess, and then we'll be moving on to the reading with a Q&A afterwards. So Jess Lohman published her middle grade eco-fantasy, Lily Bowers and the Uninvited Guest, on the 24th of April 2019, World Day for Laboratory Animals. And if you've already read Lily's story, you'll know why. It's the first of a series to show kids they really do have the power and influence to change the world and save animals. Spoiler, in this first book, to save lab animals, and in the second book, which she's just started to write, to save farm animals. She's also the founder of Ethical Brand Marketing to help planet and animal protecting visionary leaders create and implement an impactful ethical marketing strategy, one without manipulation, which enables excessive and unnecessary consumerism, which ultimately harms our environment. Which is another reason why we chose today, Black Friday, for this event to provide an alternative to shopping, because it's one of the largest shopping days of the year and further harms our environment. And as a voice talent, she specialises in narrating documentary and image films and commercials. As a writer, marketer and speaker for nature and the animals, let me now introduce you to Jess. Over to you, Jess.
Hello, thank you so much for joining us. I'm going to start. Hi, I'm Lily Bowers. Ready to go on an exciting adventure with me? Chapter 1, The Chase. Sprinting as fast as she could, Lily was barely able to draw air into her lungs. Her heart clenched tighter each time she tried to breathe. Her life was in danger, but her long legs couldn't even carry her any faster. It was useless. She swung her arms wildly in a failed attempt to gain more speed. She didn't dare turn around to see if he was still chasing her. He was, though. In fact, he was quickly gaining on her. Not only was he enormous, he was also agile. She swerved around the tree trunks like dragonflies speed over water. Yet there was no way she could outrun him. But she was almost home. She could possibly make it. She prayed to make it to her front door. Even though she knew this part of Reinhardswald, one of the largest German forests, better than her own basement at home, she didn't recognize anything, and that frightened her even more. Where's the spruce tree? Where's that huge oak tree? Or the river? Or the sweet smells from the maple tree? All the things she had cherished in her forest were gone. It still looked like a forest, but not her forest. It felt like a different forest in a different world, inhabited by different creatures, scary and big creatures. Lily felt him gaining on her and shrieked. His loud labor pants made her even less hopeful of making it home. Sweat ran down her forehead and met with her tears of utter fear. She jumped as high as she could over a dead, fallen tree trunk that lay across the path. The toe of her shoe caught on a branch, and she felt hard on the ground. Ow! Lily had twisted her ankle. There was nothing that could save her now. Through the slits of her halfway closed eyes, she watched saliva drip from his mouth onto her chin. She dared not lift her hand to wipe it away. He hovered over her and opened his mouth wide, showing off his sharp teeth. His low growl interrupted the loud pounding of Lily's heavily beating heart. Lily tried to move, but squiggling did no good. The enormous being weighed at least double what she did. Any movement could cause him to harm her further. She was trapped, or rather, paralyzed. He bore his teeth again, growled like a rabid dog, and leaned back, preparing to lunge at her. Lily's entire body jerked. Huh? What was that? Lily looked around. It was dark and silent, and she was safe in her room, in her bed. That was a dream. Whew, thank goodness. Lily inhaled deeply and wiped the sweat pearls from her brows. Her hands were shaking, and her heart was beating like African tribal dance drums. She wanted to get up, but didn't because the pitch blackness was too foreboding. She crawled under the blanket and tried to fall back to sleep. This is no use. She was way too upset from the nightmare to sleep. She turned on her reading light and picked up the book she wanted to finish before school started back up in 2 days. She was only halfway through, so she may as well finish it now. There would be no time tomorrow because she was going to the amusement park with her parents, one of her favorite activities. The letters and words on the page merged into fuzzy figures before her eyes. She couldn't concentrate on reading either. Abandoning the book, she curled up in a ball like a frightened pangolin with her eyes squeezed shut. She squinted her eyes open just enough to read her clock, 5:24 a.m. Ugh. Being too scared of the dark to get out of bed when the alarm clock was going to ring in just an hour was new. She had never felt this way before, nor ever wanted to again. Bring, bring, bring. She looked at the clock, 6:30. Finally, thank you. While she had a fun day with her parents riding roller coasters, eating ice cream, and watching live shows, Lily kept remembering the image of that nightmarish body hovering over her. That was more frightening than the roller coaster and haunted house combined. As soon as they returned home, she went to her room and laid down on her bed, still thinking of her dream. Oh no! What if that was a sign that something's wrong? In my forest! What did that dream mean? Now uneasy, she decided to make sure everything was all right. It was still daylight, so she asked her parents if she could go into the forest. Okay, but be home by 7:30. You know the rules. And besides, you have a big day ahead of you tomorrow, said Lily's mom. Thanks, Mom. She ran out the door so quickly that she didn't grab a jacket. As soon as she arrived in the thick of the woods, she stopped and breathed in deeply. Ah, that's better. She immediately felt calm again. She was in her forest, her favorite place to be in the whole wide world. She looked behind the trees and even went off the path a bit, but nothing looked unusual. There was no scary creature. The dream was now just a memory of something that didn't happen. Relieved, she went down to the river and sat on a big rock for a long time. A dragonfly caught her attention. Her eyes followed as he zipped back and forth on the water's surface. Suddenly, he stopped in midair and turned toward her. He made a beeline straight at her, and they met nose to nose. Lily jumped at first, but then froze as not to disturb her visitor. Her eyes were slightly crossed, so he backed up a bit as if to help them focus. Lily smiled at his shimmering fluorescent blue beauty. She cautiously offered her finger as a landing spot. He flew to her finger, grabbed hold with his thin, black, prickly legs, and crazily flapped his wings as if trying to lift her up. Lily laughed and stood up just to amuse him, but then flew off. Zip, zip, zip. He circled her a few times, then flew back to catching whatever was edible on the river's surface. Amazing insects, those beautiful dragonflies. She remembered watching a documentary about their incredible hunting and flight abilities. A cool breeze blew over her, and she wished she'd gotten her jacket. She rubbed her hands up and down the goosebumps on her arms, then looked at her watch. Oh no, I'm late. Better head back home now. Mud slushed under her rubber boots as she diligently followed the narrow path she had created from walking through the woods the same way. It meandered back It meandered between the tree trunks like a snake's trail through sand. Her phone beeped and broke her concentration. Lily, last call. Time to come in and get ready for bed, read her mom's text. Now she really had to go. The shadows of the tree loomed over her, but she didn't mind because this was her forest, where she spent her free time getting to know every puddle, tree root, and wild flower. She trudged through the thin carpet of leaves, which had recently started twirling down from the monstrous oak and beech trees all around her. Stopping dead in her tracks, she closed her big brown eyes, tilted her head back, and breathed deeply. Ah, the sweet smell of the maple. This is where Marley, the only maple on the path, stood proudly. She didn't name every tree in her forest, but there were a select few that she felt deserved a name. There was old Eldridge, that big lumpy oak that stood alone in the small clearing. And then there was Bernie the birch that was shedding its bark one summer. A huge piece once fell from its trunk and hit Lily right on her head. The sun was slowly saying goodbye to her through the branches overhead that almost carpeted the sky. To see more clearly, she turned on her cell phone's flashlight and continued along the path. Tomorrow's a big day, a really big day. No more elementary school, no more dealing with crybabies in the first or second grades, or loud, rowdy, gross boys. I can't wait to get to my new school. Yes, tomorrow, finally, she would start fifth grade at a new school. Learning in the same building with the 12th graders would be weird. She was so scared and excited that her stomach felt like it was doing somersaults on a trampoline. Don't be scared, she kicked a stick into the air. Remember, it's never as bad as you think it's going to be. That's what her mom always said anyway. That it would be just like when they had moved from Colorado in the United States to Germany after Dad had gotten a new job. Before she knew it, she would have tons of friends again and forget that she was ever worried. It'll be good. This new school will really be good. At some point, she was going to have to believe it. Her elementary school teacher, Miss Flens, had been the best teacher ever, and Lily already missed her. Will my new teacher be nice, or will she be strict, like that one substitute, Mrs. What's-Her-Face? We were stuck with her for 4 months. Ugh, that would be horrible. Her head hanging low with her long bangs covering her eyes, Lily weaved back and forth through the trees, passing the small clearing that would soon be full of autumn leaves. She expertly sidled down the slippery, muddy hill and swung around a big spruce tree. It towered over the flat rock where she sat down and wiggled into the opening she'd cut through the thick brushes, leading to her backyard. Those bushes were all that lay between her house and her beautiful forest. They certainly weren't much protection from the wild boar who roamed at night, but she wasn't scared. As long as you don't get too close or threaten them, they won't hurt you. If one charges you because you are too close, move away at the last minute to confuse her, find a big stick to protect yourself and a tree to climb, and call me to come get you, her mom had told her a few times. She also warned Lily not to be in the forest when it was dark. Simple rules that Lily had never broken until tonight. Chapter 2, Lily's new friend. She just wasn't ready for the new school tomorrow. Feeling safe in her forest for as long as she could was worth breaking a rule just this once. Not that she didn't feel safe at home, it was just that the forest offered her something many humans couldn't: quiet. And an entirely different world, a world of peace and nature and pure beauty. Lily found beauty in every living being. Even as a young girl, she was fascinated with small insects crawling on the ground or flying in the air, or spiders creating their webs. Most of all, she loved the sounds of the forest, the chirping, the rustling of the autumn leaves when they blew off the trees, the distant calls of the birds of prey, and when it was really still at night, she could sometimes hear a wolf's howl. After being exterminated by hunters in the late 1800s, German forests were silenced, and the human fear of the wolf had dwindled. But now, thankfully, they were slowly starting to come back, and that made Lily's heart sing out loud. Her dad always told her she was raised by a family of wolves because she spent all her free time in the woods, sometimes with a friend or her parents, but many times alone. As soon as Lily walked in the door, she heard her mother sigh with relief, who immediately scolded, "I told you not to stay out so long. It's way too dangerous, Lily." But it wasn't really dark yet. The forest isn't dangerous. But okay, I'm sorry, Mom. I just lost track of time. Losing track of time doesn't cut it. Next time you're late, I'm grounding you. Do you understand? Yes, Mom, I'm sorry. Lily put her head down. Lily's dad was reading the paper in his chair, and he looked up and winked at her. She winked back and went upstairs to get ready for bed. Dad was always way calmer than Mom about stuff like this. Later, her parents came upstairs to tuck her in. "Mom, how did you feel before your first day of middle school?" "As nervous as a cat in a carrier heading to the vet." But there really was no need to be nervous. My teachers and classmates were great, and it was a valuable experience. "I'm sure you'll have a lot of fun and get so much out of it. Now, get to sleep. It's late. Good night, dear." "Good night, Mom. Good night, Dad. I love you both." "We love you too. Sleep well." Her parents turned off the light and left her bedroom. Not really sure what her mom meant with the valuable experience part, Lily laid on her back, looking up at the glowing stars taped on her ceiling. "Please let my teachers and classmates be nice. Please, I'll do anything," she whispered to anyone out there who may have been listening. After a while, she drifted off to sleep. Suddenly, a loud noise awoke her. "Ow!" A high-pitched howl pierced Lily's ears. Startled, she shook her head, trying to make it go away, but she heard it again, closer this time, too close. Her eyes flew open. Her room was perfectly still. She shifted her gaze to the balcony door. Is that a shadow? It moved quickly, and she pulled the blankets up over her head. "Mom, Dad, help!" she whimpered in a weak voice that remained muffled under her covers. The dream she had had the night before invaded her mind as small sweat beads formed on her forehead again. Lily uncovered one eye. The shadow was still there, this time moving slowly behind the white gauze of her curtains. A high-pitched whine, almost too quiet to hear, drifted through the door and into her room. Before she realized what she was doing, the covers were off, her feet touched the thin carpet, and she scuffled toward the balcony door. With one swift motion, she pulled back the curtains. She squinted through the glass, but it was too dark outside to see anything. "Heek!" Lily stumbled backward. A huge dog-like face came into view. It was staring right at her. Or at least, she thought it was a dog, but it was bigger than any dog she'd ever seen. As her fear increased with each second, so did her curiosity. She slowly moved toward the window of her balcony door again. Looking straight into the dog's pleading eyes, Lily felt a wave of sympathy and calmness flow through her body. Instinctively, she carefully opened the door and whispered, "Here, doggy, are you okay?" He took a few steps towards Lily behind the glass door. He was no dog. He looked more like a wolf. "Ah!" She quickly closed the door and the curtains. Her heart jumped in her throat. Just as she took a breath to yell for her dad, the creature scratched on the door and let out a faint whimper. Maybe it's hurt and needs help. I can't just leave it out there alone." Lily peeked through the curtains. The animal cocked its head and looked at her with big, sad, lonely eyes. "But he looks so sweet." Are you hurt? Lily asked through the glass door. Yes, my tail got stuck in a trap. I was lucky I did not step in it, the animal replied. His voice reminded her of her dad's soothing voice. Come on in. Lily opened the door without thinking twice. Let me take a look at it. The animal gingerly walked into Lily's room, and she crossed the room to flip on the big light. When she turned back around, she gasped, Oh my, you certainly are no dog. Are you a wolf? I've seen wolves before, but you're a lot bigger than they were. Yes, I am a wolf. A big one, but not a bad one, the wolf chuckled. The enormous wolf was beautifully marked with black, brown, and beige fluffy hair. There was one single black vertical line on its forehead, champagne ears, and a white mouth, highlighting long, dark whiskers. Brilliant mint-colored eyes studied her as the creature took long, deep breaths through a flared, pitch black snout. I've never seen a more magnificent, Lily froze in midair. Her thick eyebrows drew together. Wait, hold on a second. You can talk. Only with you, the wolf said. Lily's knees felt like jelly as she stumbled to her bed. This must be a dream. The wolf whimpered again, interrupting Lily's reverie. She shook herself back into reality. Oh, I'm so sorry. I forgot about your tail. Please lie down. I'll look at it. Lily immediately checked his fluffy brown tail. It wasn't broken, but there was a clear cut from the trap, and the wound needed to be cleaned. I think you'll be all right. Wait here. I'll be right back. Knowing her parents would not approve of her uninvited guest, she knew she had to be very quiet. She tiptoed downstairs, past the living room, and through the kitchen to get the first aid kit from the pantry. Luckily, her parents didn't wake up. When she came back, the wolf was lying down in the same exact spot. After cleaning and bandaging the wound as best she could, she clapped her hands together. There you go. As good as new. Thank you, the wolf replied in a low tone and stood up. I knew you would help me. Huh? How? I know how much you love and care for animals. Well, that's true. But still, I could have screamed and hollered for my parents who could have hurt you, or worse, killed you. I knew you would not scream, though. I wasn't so sure. You really did frighten me. She paused. Hey, are you a boy or a girl? I am a male. What's your name? Aloe. The mother of my family, Alpina, named me. It means spiritual guide. Nice to meet you, Aloe. I'm Lily. I know. Lily bowed before her while lowering his head and bending his right paw underneath his chest. Really? How? Lily sat on her bed. I have known you since you were a young child. I often watched you play in your backyard. I would have known that, Lily protested. One day, when you were carefully freeing a butterfly from a spider web, you spotted me. I don't remember that at all. You were very young and had just moved here. We stared at each other for quite a while, but as soon as you ran to get your father to tell him I was there, I scurried away. It was not time to meet you yet, and it certainly was not time to meet your father. But now you are 10 and old enough to understand. Understand what? Lily leaned in, listening intently. Aloe paused. He continued in a low, quiet voice. How to heal her. Who? I don't understand. Is someone sick? Lily's mind was racing. Why are you here anyway? How did you know I love and care for animals? She asked without giving Aloe time to answer. Tell me, please, what is going on? You will find out everything soon enough. Now get some sleep. It is almost daylight, and you are going to have a big day tomorrow. Before Lily could ask how he knew about tomorrow, Aloe turned around, went outside, jumped off her balcony, and ran across the backyard. Poking her head outside the door, she watched as he ducked through the hole in the bushes and disappeared into the dark woods, Lily rubbed her eyes to make sure she didn't imagine the entire encounter. A cool breeze swept into her room, and she closed the door. Crawling back into bed was easy. Falling back asleep was impossible. What did aloe mean? Heal her? Lily struggled to calm down. As her thoughts finally faded, her head deeply sank into her pillow until she was finally asleep. So that was the first 2 chapters of Lily Bowers and the Invited Guest. I hope you enjoyed it. But before we part and go back to eating leftover pumpkin pie, if you celebrated Thanksgiving yesterday, happy belated Thanksgiving, I'd like to introduce you to Mother Nature. A wonderful artist, Heather Brockman Lee, illustrated her for me, and all the other illustrations were illustrated by Antonia Dreves. And in the back of the book, I also included the following: 15 simple things to help save and become a much needed voice for animals, and quotes about the importance of animals and ecodiversity, and information about the UN Sustainable Development Goals. And if you're interested in reading the rest of the book, I'm offering 10% off the ebook with the coupon code BookLaunch2020, and you can find that at jesslohman.com/ebook. And if you're interested in the paperback, you can find it on Amazon or other platforms, soon on other platforms. I'm still working on that. And you can find the link under jesslohman.com/Lily Bowers. And yeah, that's it. That's all the time we have